You know, I originally did the Rise and Fall of Weezer series because at the time, they were just coming off of Hurley, an album that, while not awful, is just kinda drab and pedestrian and very skippable save for like one or two tracks. And prior to that, they'd just come off of fucking Raditude, which... well, I spent an hour on that goddamn thing. You all already know how I feel about it. I decided to start the Raphouse series because I figured Weezer were on the precipice of a breakup, and it'd probably be a good idea to get my eulogy in nice and early, but then Everything Will Be Alright in the End came along and promptly stuck its foot up my ass. In the best possible way, mind, but still, we've gotten 5 albums from Weezer between now and then, if you want to count Teal as canon, I guess. And now with the Black Album, I can't help but be reminded of when I did the Hurley video, weirdly enough, because so much of this album reminds me of Hurley. In its own weird little way, it's not awful. In fact, hell, it's got a handful of tracks I'd say I rather enjoy, but it's coming off of the tepid and insufferable Pacific Daydream, and while this album is better than that, it's not exactly much better, and I'd be hesitant to call this one good. It has good moments, for sure. I still like Zombie Bastards, for as corny as it is. High as a Kite, when separated from its fuck-awful music video, is still a pleasantly chill track. Too Many Thoughts in My Head has a very pleasant and upbeat, danceable kind of vibe to it, and it probably serves as the overall high point of the album for me. And you want to know a song I've really kind of come around on? California Snow. Yeah, I didn't like the song at first, I rather hated it, but, you know, the more I hear it, the more it does kind of grow on me, even with its faults. You know, it's dumb, but it's got a good enough beat, and it was probably a wise move to use this as a closer to this album, since this is one of the few tracks that has some kind of kick to it. That's the big problem with Black. California Snow may be a polarizing track, but what if I told you that is the heaviest this album gets? Yeah, that's probably big alarm bells to at least some of you. The album, while not nearly as meaningless, empty, and shallow as Pacific Daydream was, still lacks a lot of energy. That's a sad thing that's unfortunately carried over here. The darker tone that Rivers kept going on about during the promotional cycle, it's here, I guess. I definitely see it, particularly in the lyrical themes. Pretty much every song on this album expresses a downer of some kind, even if that downer is something as pedestrian as the hook from Hey Ya. Tone is definitely darker than the usual Weezer output, at least. It's still miles away from, like, Rivers of Nile or whatever. Hell, this isn't even giving My Chemical Romance a run for its money in that department. It's going for dark, sure, but I can still see them perfectly fine if you get my gist. It's like they just turned the dimmer switch all the way down and can't figure out how to make the lights actually turn off. Sonically, this album is strange. I almost feel like Rivers was trying to shoot for almost a goth-sounding record, but was so lost stumbling around in the dark that he accidentally made a Captain into Neil record by mistake. Weezer is just too poppy of a group to reasonably sell this kind of dark sound, and it shows. Like, particularly in the middle of the album, songs like Living in LA, Piece of Cake, and I'm Just Being Honest just feel like regular ass power pop Weezer, only with all the power sucked out and replaced with the teensiest bit of black eyeliner. The lack of crunch and flavor in the guitar work, along with the near complete absence of solos, and a much bigger focus on moodier, mellower synth work and piano tones. It makes it feel like a Weezer record that's listened to This Mortal Coil's It'll End in Tears album one too many times. And Byzantine, Oh, I adore Laura Jane Grace, and I'm happy she enjoyed her time working with the band, at least, for sure. But Byzantine is probably my least favorite track here. It's not lyrically bad. As an Against Me song, I could have maybe seen this work. As a Devouring Mother's song, maybe this would have worked better. Hell, I could even see this working as a standard-ass Weezer song, but as some cocktail lounge, bossa nova, Ron Burgundy-ass thing? Nope. What they're going for here, I don't feel like they accomplished it, but it's not terrible, it's not unlistenable. This isn't a Ratitude for sure, even if the critics do feel otherwise. To me, this album feels more like Hurley. It's an album that kinda, sorta has some good ideas behind it, and it was even able to pull off a few of those better concepts, but the overall theme and focus just isn't a strong one. Darker, more personal albums are a thing that Weezer can do, but as they say, this ain't it, fam. And I can't help but think the band completely knows that this ain't it. They're aware that this ain't it. They released half the freaking album in singles before it even came out properly. They released whatever the hell that Covers album was supposed to be to help distract us from this album coming out. This is totally speculation, but I can't help but think they knew they had a dog on their hands. At the very least, the way they've handled this particular album cycle kinda speaks to a lack of confidence in the material. I mean, hell, the day before this album came out, Rivers released a public statement saying that the next album was gonna go back to the big guitars. You know, the exact opposite of what this album is. Good lord, if you're releasing a preemptive apology for your record, that doesn't ring very well for your record, dude. I don't think this album is like that bad. In fact, I'll go ahead and say what I said about the last Bring Me the Horizon record about this album as well. If this is the worst thing we have to deal with all year, it's probably gonna be a pretty good year. But, forgive me, Rivers, I'm just being honest, it's still not very good. And like Hurley, it's almost entirely skippable. You really don't need to hear this thing if you're not a mega fan. If none of the 5 singles from this album sold ya, then you don't have to waste your time. Hell, a lot more stuff came out on Friday that's honestly way better than this album. Fuck, I wish I didn't have to basically cover this album out of obligation. I'd love to be talking about the new Sundara Karma instead. The Black Album gets 2.5 much better Black Albums out of 5.
Super special thanks to